Hello everybody and welcome to another mini Q&A. This is the series which you guys throw me questions, all manner of related to Disney, and I try to give you answers to the best of my ability. Today I just want to preface it by saying, well, one, I'm all alone, no Q&A crew, they're all doing a scavenger hunt and I didn't want to interrupt them. And two, this will probably be a little bit shorter than usual, as will the next one, and the reason for that is because I'm actually going out of town and I'm actually setting up for an Extra Life live stream, which is a 24-hour live stream that me and a couple of my friends will be hosting on my Twitch page for charity. And so between the two of them, I had to produce a couple of videos a little early, that way that you would have some content to watch, and I would still be able to prepare for those things. So as a result, this is a little bit shorter, so I apologize. But that said, let's just jump right in. Our first question this week comes from, these are a couple of quick ones because I think they've got quick answers. Mathau Weinstein asks, how do you think that Epcot would be changed if Walt had lived longer? Do you think it would have been the community he dreamed of? This is such a depressing answer because I think as much as I would love to be the optimist and be like, oh, he would make Epcot, it'd be a great, fantastic city of the future, all these other cities would they would follow suit, and then the world would be a better place. The truth is, I think if Walt lived long enough to make a genuine and earnest attempt at the Epcot city he wanted, you would have seen Walt's biggest failure. I think personally that while it's a great idea and it was a great goal that he had, that just the fundamental changes in the world that we saw and how companies operated and how cities operated, that Walt's Epcot just would not have been possible. I think it could have bankrupted the Disney company. This was at a point in their history where they just didn't have all the money that they have today. So, you know, I think it would have been a big risk that I think would not have paid off. And I think it could have ruined the Disney company and put an end to just like that whole empire that he was building. I think a big part of that is Epcot so heavily depended on this idea that companies would use Epcot as a staging platform for all of their latest technologies and upgrades to show the people of the world what living with, you know, the latest refrigerators like, or the latest, you know, television set. And I don't think that's the way the world works today. And so Epcot would have, on that fundamental concept, fallen apart. And then beyond that, you get to the point where, you know, Epcot would have had to been, you know, still run by the Disney company, and you run into these sort of sticky issues where, you know, if you settle down and you want to live somewhere, you want to own the property that you live in, and you couldn't have done that in Walt's Epcot, and you would have lost certain voting rights because, you know, they wanted to maintain a certain appearance and a certain standard of quality. And so I think it would have just been a big mess, and I think it was actually better off for the Disney company that it never came to fruition. Which is a depressing thing to say. I know we want to imagine it would have been amazing and fantastic and it would have changed the world, and I certainly would have loved to see that happen, but I think realistically I don't think that would have been the case. But that's just my opinion. We'll never know, really, which is the bummer. Next question comes from Jake, who asks, because the World Showcase was going to be a separate park, how different do you think it'd be? E.g. attendance, rides, countries included, and how do you think Epcot would have changed? Thanks. This is the Epcot episode. This is another one where I think it's sort of a depressing answer, but I think honestly, if it was kept as a separate park, it just would never have existed. I think the reason why you saw it put together as this sort of Future World and World Showcase is because separate, they weren't working out that too well. They weren't standalone ideas. Now, the idea was Walt did want this sort of persistence world fair, which is sort of what World Showcase was meant to be, and also this sort of preview of the future, like we were just mentioning with Epcot. And so the idea was, and the legend is, that they had these two model sets, one for World Showcase and one for Future World, and Marty Sklar had this novel idea of just taking the two models and pushing them together and go, why don't we make it this one park, right? That's how the legend goes. The reason that had to happen was because it just wasn't working separately. So I don't think we would have seen a World Showcase. You know, maybe if they had tried to do the actual Epcot City, you would have seen it as a part of it. But, and to be honest, that was their narrative for a long time. Their narrative, and the reason why Epcot was called Epcot Center when it opened, was that they intended to actually follow through with Walt's plans. And the idea was the Epcot we saw with the attractions, with the World Showcase, was going to be the center of the city, thus the name Epcot Center. But then eventually they sort of dropped it when they realized they were not going to do that, and so it became just Epcot. So I don't know. I just don't think it would have happened. I don't know if they would have stood alone. It would have been different, right? You wouldn't have charged entry fees, I think, the way you would have for a theme park. If you just did World Showcase on its own, I think it would have been more of an open area, maybe with less in the form of attractions. It's tough to tell. Those what ifs are always the tougher ones, because so many minor details play such a major role, and it could be one minor difference that suddenly changes the whole course of everything. That's an interesting question, and I would love to hear what you guys think it would be. Like, maybe there would be more rides because World Showcase would have had to stand on its own, so they would have built a ride into every pavilion, or maybe it would have just been something like Downtown Disney where anybody could go check it out, and it would be mostly restaurants and shops. It would be an interesting creative experiment. Our next question comes from Gabe's Imagination, who asks, what's your favorite original Disney Parks character of all time? For example, Figment. So not from a movie. I guess it would have to be... Ooh, that's such a tough one. I mean... I like the dad from Carousel of Progress. That was a really cool effect, by the way. I really dig the dad from Carousel of Progress. I think that I have a lot of fond memories of that attraction, so maybe them. I really like all the characters involved in the Haunted Mansion and the whole, Madame Leota and just the mythology that's formed around it. So I would go between those two, one or the other. Or the parents from Horizons are great characters too. Just the ones who sort of narrate the ride, and that's totally nostalgia. And our last question today comes from actually my good friend Kelso, who has his own gaming setup. He does Twitch. He doesn't do YouTube, but if you head on over to twitch.tv/Mr. Kelso, MrKelso, he does a lot of fun streamings of like new games and stuff. So you should check him out. He asks, here's one. Why do you think Disney-related games, minus Kingdom Hearts, don't seem to be popular or sell well? So that's a good question. That's a great topic as a whole, is video games and Disney. Now, I would say you're forgetting Disney Infinity. While it's not critically, I think, acclaimed as an amazing video game, it sells really well, and it resonates a lot with kids. But you're right. Besides something like Kingdom Hearts, I think Disney games are historically known for underperforming. And I think a big reason for that is because the people who ran Disney, Michael Eisner and then Bob Iger, are very deeply rooted in traditional media. They got their start in, I think Bob Iger started as a television agent, and Michael Eisner was big into film and Paramount as a producer. So I think by having that sort of grounded history in traditional media, they're not as open to accepting new media, which is video games. And you see this a lot with the past video games. They'll throw out an idea like Epic Mickey, which does well, but, they're ready to cut the cord. Split Second was a great racing game that was put out by Disney, but it was marketed poorly, and rather than, fixing that for the next one, they just cut the cord and they stop it there. And I think they don't see it as big of a revenue stream as if it were, TV or film or something like that. And I think what we're going to need to see a resurgence in video game quality is, one, either a deal like they've done where all the Star Wars games coming out will be through EA. Are we stuck here? Or it'll be by getting a new CEO, which we're supposedly going to be getting in 2018, who's a little more, maybe doesn't come from the video game space, but at least is understanding of it and its value and sort of embraces it a little bit more. But I would love to see more Disney-related video games that do well. I guess right now we just have to hope for partnerships. Anyway, while I try to figure out how to get out of this stuck attraction, I want to thank you all for watching. If you have a question you'd like me to answer, please feel free to leave it in the comments below, or you could tweet it at me. I'm at RobPlays on Twitter. I'm RobPlaysThatGame on Facebook and Instagram. I hope you have a great week. Whatever you're doing, make the most of it. Makes it so much better. And I hope to see you next time for the next Disney Q&A.